no target reportedly for 2030 or 35, but net zero by 2050. Is that accurate? And does this show you've got your way on this?
No real surprises there, Tom. Our clear commitment is net zero emissions by 2050. Obviously, the old 2030 medium-term target is now redundant. You know, by the time the next election comes around, we'll be pretty close to 2030. And I think people are increasingly becoming aware that the pathway to 2050 won't be a linear one, because as technologies evolve and improve, the task will get less difficult along the way. So I think that the idea of having medium-term targets is a bit of a distraction. What we need to do is focus on making sure we get to net zero emissions by 2050.
No mention of coal in the document. What does that mean?
Well, you know, Tom, I was a part of the framing of that document. We all worked hard to produce it. If coal isn't mentioned in a word, that's not deliberate. We show and express strong support for the resources sector, and of course coal is very much a part of that. It's our second largest export in the resources sector, so you could hardly accuse us of not recognising that and not being supportive of coal. The Labor Party has always supported the coal mining industry. We were, in a sense, in part built on the struggles of our coal miners, and we will always support the coal mining industry.
What would it say, though, for Labor's support for coal mining, for new thermal coal mines, for example? Is there a position the party has on them?
The important thing to remember, Tom, is that more than 90% of our coal is exported to our Asian markets. And the balance, of course, is used for thermal coal generation here in Australia. The problem is that 50% of our installed capacity in coal generation is 30 years old or older. And in New South Wales, it's much worse. It's about 90%, I think you'll find. So we've got to acknowledge that coal-fired generators, like any machine, do run out of puff. They do come to the end of their physical and economic lives at some point, just as the Liddell station in my electorate is about to do at 50 years of age. So we've got to be ready to replace that firming capacity. And that's what I have in large part been fighting for.
Right, so you're fighting for that. The Prime Minister is announcing today that if Liddell doesn't go ahead and replace that power plant with something that has firmed capacity as it's described, there'll be a backing in some way by the federal government of a new gas-fired power station into Hunter Valley. Would you support that?
Well, Scott Morrison's announcement can be fairly described today as a capitulation. What he's announcing is our plan. My plan as a local member and the plan of Meryl Swanson, the member for Patterson who neighbours me. We've been arguing for 3 years now that as Liddell comes to the end of her natural life, we will need new capacity in the Hunter so that we can maintain our status of the powerhouse of New South Wales, a status we've had for many decades. So we've been working on this plan to have AGL in supporting them invest in pumped hydro, the upgrade of the Bayswater power station next to Liddell, another 100 megawatt hours there, storage, battery storage, and of course a gas peaking power station. Now, that's what Scott Morrison is embracing today. He's continuing with this pretense that he'll only do this if AGL doesn't extend Liddell in 7 months' time. He knows that's never going to happen. They always knew that's not going to happen because the station is just too old. And we want 2 gas peaking stations here in the Hunter, Tom. We want one from Snowy Hydro on the old Hydro aluminium site in Kurri Kurri, and we want one from AGL on their Tomago site right next to the existing Rio Tinto Tomago smelter. Right, that's going to be a great boost for the Hunter region.
Well, let me ask, when you say we want, is that just you and Meryl Swanson? This would be a government-backed, so perhaps through a grant, which could be hundreds of millions of dollars of taxpayer money, or through underwriting from the federal government. Is that Labor's position, that you would support what Scott Morrison's talking about, or is that your position?
What Scott Morrison has been doing up until now is running interference on the investment plans of these companies by pretending the Liddell can be extended. And if you do that, you put uncertainty in the market. How do you build a gas peaking station if you're not sure whether the government's going to be successful in their attempts to extend the deal. So he's putting that aside effectively today, even though he's still continuing that pretense. But AGL is at the planning stage, the planning approval stage for its 250 megawatt peaking station in Tomago. So that's proceeding, and that's great. And Snowy Hydro, of course, is a company wholly owned by the Australian government. It will build a peaking station, or a 350 megawatt station in Kurri Kurri. And guess what, Tom? It'll make money. That's what Snowy Hydro does. It generates electricity, both from renewables forms, hydro forms, and now gas and gas forms already. And in doing so, it makes money. And that's a good thing for Australia.
Okay, but what
and it's a good thing for the people of the Hunter Valley.
What about the 1,000 megawatt power plant that's been spoken about, as I said, government-backed, so some sort of taxpayer support in the Hunter? Are you saying that's your position?
That's not right.
But is it federal Labor's position?
That's not been accurately reported. The Snowy Hydro plant will be about 350 megawatt hours, but there is scope to ramp it up in the future, and that would be a good thing. The Tomago gas station is about 250 megawatt. We've got an additional 100 megawatts coming at Bayswater. We've got about 1,000 megawatts, I think, out of the battery storage, and I'm not sure how much out of the hydro project, but it's significant. There's also a gas generator on the Central Coast, which is struggling to ever meet capacity at the moment because of a lack of gas. And that's why we've been arguing for some time. I'm saying we as local members, to get that Hunter gas pipeline down from Woolloombilla in southeast Queensland, down through Corindai, picking up Santos gas, down through the valley, energising our manufacturing sector and getting the gas needed to build these gas generators, and of course to fuel that generator on the Central Coast.
Let me clarify that point again. So government underwriting of gas infrastructure, you mentioned their pipelines. This is being announced today from Scott Morris, another thing they're looking at. Mark Butler's expressed concern about whether that's the right use of taxpayer money. How does this get worked out? Because you seem to support it, he doesn't. Does this need to get thrashed out at Shadow Cabinet?
My understanding is that Scott Morrison this morning will say the government is prepared to do these things if necessary. They won't be making any commitments. There's a lot of spin and announcement today, as is always the case. But I'm going to be on their case, Tom, and I'm going to make sure that they do these things. And, of course, it makes absolute common sense.
Don't you have to convince your own party first?
No, I don't believe you'll get any resistance from my party of the concept of underwriting long-term gas supply contracts. It doesn't cost the taxpayer any money, but it allows money to be raised on the markets because it brings certainty. And the Labor Party committed $1.5 billion to a gas pipeline during the last election campaign from the Northern Territory to Queensland. So we have a strong history here.
Okay. We're right out of time, Joel Fitzgibbon. I'm sure we'll be talking about this again down the track. Thank you.